Hi, I'm Susan Papanicholas from How Does Your Garden Grow in Seattle, Washington. Thanks for tuning into our Getting Your Garden Ready for Spring series. It's late winter in the garden. It's quite cold out, but there's a whole lot to do in the garden at this time of year to get your garden set up for a gorgeous spring and to make your life a little bit easier by doing ahead of time. Today we're going to be talking about cutting back evergreen ferns. I'm sitting here today with this lovely, beautiful sword fern. It does not look like it needs to be cut back at this time of year, but cutting back sword ferns and a lot of different types of evergreen ferns is, I think, a really helpful thing to do in the late winter in the garden. It accomplishes two things. One is that it prevents a buildup of old leaves, old decaying leaves in the center of the fern. A lot of ferns, if you don't cut them back regularly, the older leaves will die back or turn brown, and you get kind of a tangle of new leaves, old leaves, and it doesn't look as beautiful as it could. Another thing it does is allow you to see the unfurling fronds more easily. I think that fern fronds unfurling is a really beautiful thing to watch in spring. They're so beautiful the way these tightly little round spirals unroll and expand out into the big beautiful fern leaves, and I find it super exciting every spring when that happens. By cutting away this old foliage now, you'll have better access to see that happening, and it highlights that really beautiful part of the growth cycle. So I usually wait until the end of February or the beginning of March to do this job, and I come in and I cut back my evergreen ferns. Most ferns will benefit from this type of haircut at this time of year. The Hardy Fern Society has a list on their webpage that's super helpful to tell you which ferns you should not cut back at this time of year. But most of the ferns I grow commonly in people's gardens: sword ferns, Himalayan maidenhair fern, autumn fern, different types of tassel ferns. They all really benefit from getting a haircut at this time of year. So I'll show you how to do it. You're taking a fern like this really beautiful sword fern, and it has sort of a base with little brown coiled up nubbins. Those are next year's fronds. And so I'm going to cut these green fronds off at the bottom of their stem back down to that base. So I come in and I'm just going to very evenly go down to the bottom of each of these fronds and cut the whole frond off at the bottom. I don't want to cut into those brown coils because that's next year's fronds. This fern's pretty petite, so it's a quick job. Sometimes on a big sword fern, this can take a while. So that's it. Now I've got this left in the garden, and when these unfurl, I'll be able to see them. When they're fully expanded, it will be a big, beautiful fern once again for next year's growing season. It's much easier to do this job if you catch it before new fronds start unfurling. If you wait too long and the new growth is coming up, this job that's super simple at this time of year becomes a very fiddly, complicated, unpleasant task of trying to separate out the new growth from the old growth and needing to be very careful. So this is a great job to take care of before any new growth has started. For extra credit gardening, you can stage the timing of this so you're cutting things back right before they start to unfurl. Himalayan maidenhair ferns, in my experience, are the earliest to leaf out, so I make sure I cut those back first. Then sword ferns, and then some of the tassel ferns, and I find that autumn fern is the very last one to leaf out. So for the most part in my clients' gardens, I'll take care of this job all at once at the end of February. But if you're gardening at home and you want to leave the green up as long as possible, you can stage it so that you're cutting things back just before the new foliage starts to emerge. Cutting these ferns back now is going to give me a little bit of a bare spot in the garden for late winter, but a beautiful show of unfurling fronds in spring and gorgeous ferns with fresh green foliage all summer long.